Hi guys, I'm Pavlos. I'm here to talk about developer experience today. So first, who am I? That's the official story, the background story. I just born, raised, studied. I was working in Cyprus, then I moved to Greece, and then the last 10 years I'm in the UK, where I started a consultancy company, and we're delivering projects mainly in UK, and recently we branched out to Germany as well. And starting to transforming from an individual contributor to managing a team or responsible for others, I started looking for patterns, for things that how can they make their life easier? What are their problems? What are their concerns? And how we can just not just push code faster, but how can we make our life easier on a day-to-day basis? Some of the official explanation you can see on the screen. So DevEx, developer experience, it's how easy or difficult it is for a developer to do essential task in their day-to-day job. What's the current state of software development? When you join our organization, you're lucky if you just can sort you up in a week. Usually it takes several days to just sort your access, figure out what we should do, give you access to the code, and then you need to learn all the environment, how the team works, and then the story goes on. Maybe they have got poor or maybe architecture, or they didn't think properly how they shall structure their infrastructure or their software, and then you stumble on some common things like taking hours to build or deploy a system. So how many changes can I push a day, or how many things can I test, and how many things that we can release, and then comes down to the other problem that we regularly see: the observability and testing incompetence of the team. So either they're not using the right tools, or they're not have any tools in place, or they're not testing, and the story goes on. So you push something, you merge something, and you pray that something will not break down the line. So how can we fix those things, guys? And why is DevEx? So we see all this, the term that we'll say digital transformation or technology transformation. So the things are changing so rapidly. Even a service that you know from your cloud provider and you learned 2 years ago, it's not the same service today from the features and the changes that they push. So how can you keep up with all these things and be able to efficiently deliver software? And also the complexity that we have in the today's systems. 20 years ago, you just bought one server, one physical server, installed 3 softwares on it, and that was it. Now we've got microservices, we've got interconnectivity with different SaaS providers, and the story goes on and on. So when you're joining a team or you're working on large projects, how can you learn the things faster? How you can be a contributor back to the team? And then comes to the talent attraction and retention. Developers are more likely to join and stay in a team that it's easy for them to do their day-to-day job. So they've got nice experience on every day. And then how you streamline the onboarding and offboarding activities of those developers. And as you can imagine, when you move to more regulated industries, that's become a big issue. And then you've got the speed, efficiency, and innovation. So if you improve your DevEx, then you can faster deploy software and deliver software and features and bug fixes. And then positive developer experience foster a culture of innovation inside the team, because they know if they can try different things, there is nothing that can stop them, no blame culture, and the story goes on there. And also adapting developer experience and tools and processes like a modern CI/CD pipeline or more advanced CI/CD pipeline and infrastructure as code. It can be easier for them to deliver value back to the business. So there is a lot of work. It's done by Microsoft and also GitHub around developer experience, you can imagine. And also developer experience, it comes for the user experience. But in this time, your user is a developer. So that's an official explanation from GitHub. So it's a developer productivity, the impact that they can do on their day-to-day job, and also their satisfaction. And if you multiply it by the team, then you've got a stellar developer experience. So I'll take a pragmatic approach and talk about 3 topics, about the architecture, both on the software and the infrastructure, about automation and CI/CD because it plays a crucial role, and then about the people and processes. And the next slide that you see, it's based on a client that we had here in UK, and we had to manage a team of 50 engineers doing their work on this daily basis. So let's start from the architecture. What we saw works well is when you put everything in one place. You've got your code, your application code, your infrastructure code, testing in one place. And then not only that, you've got the documentation and all that goes around the product. So when a newcomer joins, can check out one thing and can tinkering around and see how everything works instead of just looking around on different systems, different platforms, and trying to figure out in his or her mind how all these things work. And then we come down to the infrastructure or how you structure your application. It's good to build a multi-tenant application for them. So every developer can build, deploy, and manage its own application tenant, let's say. Although, how can you do it in a pragmatic approach? How can you reduce the resources that they can use? So we come up with a concept of using a common layer, things that are common around an AWS account, let's say. You've got your zones, you need one Docker registry, you need one ECS cluster, and then that's leave or write the code to build only what is different between the different application tenants. And at the end, the production system is only a single application tenant, but you gave them the ability to have so many people working on this on the same software version in parallel. And here's again a design that for this application, just to give you an overview of what's going on there. So like you've got one CloudFront, you've got the wildcard certificate on it, and then for you've got one ALB again in the common infrastructure. But inside in the ALB you can have different rules. So one rule it's a host name per your developer, and then can correlate back to different services at the end. So then let's move to the CI/CD. So when I join a project, I usually ask those 3 questions. What happens when I create a pull request? What happens when I merge? And how can I release code in production? And this is a typical pull request that we design and we follow up to the other projects. So you've got the common things that you expect, how to build the code, lint it, test it, deploy it, and then run the tests. And at the end, tear down the entire environment. And if you follow a pragmatic approach when you create this infrastructure, or how do you structure the entire application, then it's the same thing. You gave the ability to the developers to deploy their own application tenant, and then you bring it up to the CI/CD. So the same concept, different implementation. And then what happens to when I merge the code? It follows similarly the same steps, deploys to the default application tenant inside the development environment, although here you can run different set of tests. And that different set of tests come back from the feedback from the developers, what they want to see, or what delays them to the PR that they don't want to use it on a day basis, or it's a very rare problem that it's good to catch it somewhere along the line before you reach the production. And so The next, it's release workflow. So just a typical thing again, plan, release the infrastructure changes, and then promote your application code. And you can use that specific on AWS. You can use alarms for auto rollback and stuff like that. And then you can build another observability layer on top of it that we can touch later on. So, and then moves to the observability section. And I can say observability and tooling because they're going together. And there is a spawn of tools around DevOps. It's nice that we have so many tools. On the other hand, it's good to use less is more, because when you work on a project for 2 years, it's easy for you to pick up a new tool. But imagine a newcomer, it needs to learn another 2 or 3 things along this thing. So give your developers the ability to use what's meaningful for them and use as less tools and processes as possible. So when a developer goes to develop an application or a service, it needs to just look to one thing instead of 5 different places. And then when I started looking for more in depth on this topic of developer experience, I stumbled on this framework. It's exactly the same thing for business. And you see how all these interconnect. So you've got 3 pillars: the people, technology, and processes, and how they collaborate all together in order to deliver value back to the business. It's the same thing for our developers that we want to achieve here. So, and then we move to the processes. I say establish an easy and nice process, but what is nice, guys? It's not nice because someone tells you it's nice. It's nice because the feedback that you're gathering from your team shows that it's nice. Like people, they like what they're doing. You see less complaining, and also rarely someone send you that I follow this thing and thank you for creating because it saved me half a day. And another thing on the developer experience that we did with the team, it's to assign a buddy or multiple buddies. So when someone joins a team, we've got everything documented, what you need to install or how to set you up faster to start doing your job. And let's follow all the steps in order to release a small bug fix or a small feature to the system. So with your buddy, you learn all those hooks that you need to pass and how you can supposed to do your job on day to day. And one last thing, it's to create documentation and internal portals, but bear in mind that's to keep that meaningful. So don't create 10 pages of documentation about one service. Nobody will read it. Even if someone pings you on the Slack and you say the URL, it will not read it. So try to keep them short and meaningful. And on the internal portal site, try to create things that are useful for them. Like they're releasing a service, they just need to look metrics in one single page instead of browsing through different tools or things. And so, key takeaways, I can say that developer experience is crucial for competitiveness. So how the things are moving in today's world, it's superior to have a good DevEx because it gives you agility and enables you to adapt and evolve faster as a company. Then use modern tools and practices and be pragmatic here in order to have a bit of the both words. Keep the cost low, keep the things and also on the other hand, give the ability to your developers to be isolated, develop their own thing in their own pace. And also streamline onboarding and onboarding process and give them development portals and documentation so they can be self-started. And at the end, culture is a key thing. I think a lot of previous speakers in this conference talk about this. So build a thriving culture between your teammates. So that's it. Thank you.
Questions?
Yeah, so thank you. That was a great presentation. One of the questions I've got for you is similar to a question I asked in a previous talk, which is how do you actually measure developer experience and measure the joy and the satisfaction that those developers are going through? And to add to that, how do you then use that as a feedback mechanism to improve the experience of the developer?
Thank you. So when you do your, let's say you follow the Scrum and you do the retros at the end, you see that they're complaining less, or they're changing all the things that they're complaining. So or the topics that are going to the second part of the question, or they're complaining about the same thing. So you need to change something in your process and stuff like that. And then you get the mood of the team, how they like to collaborate. Do they collaborate, or they're just sitting alone in front of a screen and somehow we release something?